Hey everybody, I am back in the North Wisconsin woods for a little vacation, a little relaxation. I did a couple of videos up here last year, and usually I do them down by the river right over there. And it's a little overcast, but it's very warm for October. It's like 70 degrees today, so I'm going to take the opportunity and give you a channel update and give you something to look forward to and things you can expect on my channel here in the next 4 to 6 months, and answer some questions that have been coming in for me. So the biggest question I get has to do with what other bands I'll be covering. So when I started this channel, I wanted to essentially cram 20 years worth of video into 10 years. So I'm coming up on 2 years in and I'm right on schedule. So the most requested groups I've gotten so far are the Turtles, the Hollies, and Paul Revere and the Raiders. Now, some months back, the biggest request I had gotten was Spanky and Our Gang, which really surprised me. I didn't expect that people would be that interested in that group. Great band, great group. So I knocked that one off my list very early. So of these three, I think you probably will be seeing the Turtles next. And I have begun work on the Hollies as well. So those are coming. Some of the other ones I want to cover are a little more extensive. That'll probably take 4 to 5 videos each to tell the band history. Groups like the Byrds, the Beach Boys, the Monkees. Not sure which one of those I'm going to do first, but one of those is going to get started soon because I'm anxious to, cross one of those off my list as well. All of those are going to be really fun to do, so I'm really looking forward to it. But it takes a little bit of extra research. There's so much on them, it's a lot more for me to go through. Some of the bands that I want to do that are favorites of mine that have not been requested are groups like the Pentangle, Booker T and the MGs. Another favorite of mine are the Dillards. One other favorite of mine that has been requested is the Free Design. So all those bands are coming as well, but as you may imagine, they'll have to be taken one at a time, I guess, because it's a lot to handle, and I do want to get them all in there. So of course, I'll always be adding quite a lot of Beetle content. That's been, I'd say about half of my stuff is Beetle content. And as you know, I've been busy on the Let It Be stuff. Done 8 videos on that, on those sessions so far. Hey Oreo, this is Oreo. She's getting old. She's 16. So the Beetle videos, when I started this channel, my goal was to not just rehash the same topics on the Beatles that have been done to death. Therefore, I had started to look at some of these narratives, attack narratives, give them a proper flogging, and just offer some opinion that I've always kind of been afraid to talk about just because I didn't hold an opinion that was maybe that popular. So I'm finding that people appreciate some of those opinions, so I'm going to continue on those as well. I think I'm going to also start doing some Beatle album reviews. Initially, I wasn't going to do this just because many have been done, but maybe I can bring a different spin to some of them. I probably won't be doing them in order, but those I'll probably throw in little by little because they'll be easier for me to do, quicker turnaround, and I like this video right now. This is an easy one for me to do because there's almost no editing, there's no graphics, and that's what really takes the time when I produce these videos. Beautiful fall day here today, by the way. So the other thing I also want to continue to do are book reviews, particularly on the Beatles. Now I purchase a lot of books, and my library's pretty big. And I've always collected books on these bands that I've always loved. And oftentimes they give so much more depth and detail that we don't hear on, the tidbits we gather from classic rock radio or just the copy and paste type of articles you see online. And so I'm going to continue mostly doing Beatle book reviews because I think that as I do my research on the Beatles, I'm diving deeper into these books, and the research that takes me to some of these places is really quite interesting. Some authors are much better than I thought. Some offer a lot of information that doesn't get talked about very much. There's just so many Beatle books. I mean, there's probably over 1,000 of them. So it's hard to get to them all. It's hard to get even a fraction of them. But I'm going to try to hit some of the highlights and some that really I feel really offer some good information. The other thing I'm going to continue doing, you may have noticed I started doing some interviews with some colleagues in the YouTube community and in the podcast community. There are a couple people I've invited on my show. I've been invited on a couple of their shows, and I enjoy doing that because when I talk to somebody and have a conversation, I hear myself saying things that I normally wouldn't hear myself say when I do it from an outline and present it directly to the camera like this. If I'm talking to somebody, it usually gets a little bit different take out of me, and I like that. So, and I usually learn. I usually am talking with people that I can learn from as well. So there's going to be a few more of those coming up this year, and hopefully I can continue to talk to interesting people. So that's my goal with regard to interviews. I've been asked about doing bands from the 70s and applying the type of style that I use. And for the time being, I'll probably do some bands that spill into the 70s. But for now, I'm not going to really deal on it with any 70s bands. I might do, I don't know, might do a fun piece here or there that might be more pop culture based as opposed to a band based. There are a couple bands that fit into my format pretty well, the 60s format, that are more 70s bands than 60s bands. We'll see about that, but I'm open to it. And the thing in the 70s I'm probably going to focus on more has to do about the Beatles' solo careers. So I think, I'm not sure how I'm going to go about it, but I've got a couple ideas for videos on the Beatles solo years that is a little bit of a different way of looking at their career in respect to the other things that were going on. So I'm kind of looking forward to that. The other thing I've been doing, another part of my show, are albums that never were. I just did one of those in my last video, and I'm going to continue doing that. I've done just Beatles so far. I think I've done 5. And there's other bands that I've got, but I don't think I could do a whole video on one, like Buffalo Springfield Stampede album. Maybe I could. So maybe I'll do 2 or 3 in a video and see how that goes. I always like to utilize my design skills on those album covers, so that's always a challenge for me. And to reproduce them at a 12 by 12 size is also a challenge. So I like a challenge, and I'll be rolling those out to you little by little. Some of the band histories I do may incorporate those in those videos, so you might see those there first, but I'm not sure. We'll see how it goes. So one of the questions I get a lot is, what is my process of putting these videos together? And it's quite a long process. I mean, my research goes back, in some cases, decades. I started to collect articles from magazines and newspapers in the 80s, actually. So I started building, I wasn't sure what I was going to use them for, but if it was a discography, this was pre-internet time, so Goldmine magazine, it was more of a newspaper back then. That was a publication that I really bought a lot of copies of. And oftentimes they would have a discography you just couldn't find anywhere else, with very obscure stuff and labels. And that's how I started to learn about the bands, and enabled me, when the internet did come along, I was able to go after some stuff that I knew already existed. So that's where I got my basis, and I've always been buying books. So that's where I got my basis for my research, essentially, aside from just listening to tons of music. So when I decide to do a band, usually I bring out everything I can think that I have on them, you know, all the albums, books and articles and things like that. And I try to put a timeline together of the history of the band. And I try to do it in a way that's just, that it's informative to somebody who's already a fan, but also is entertaining enough to somebody who doesn't know that much about the band, maybe knows their hits only, but wants to get more into them. So consequently, I leave out a lot of details. And some people say, well, why didn't you mention this, or why didn't you mention that? Well, sometimes I forget, but sometimes I purposely leave it out because these videos, I try to keep them at a good length in which to view them in. So my videos typically run, I don't know, 15 to 18 minutes, right in that range. And some of the videos I do on these bands are have multi parts to them. And it's easier for me to lay them out that way because there are natural breaks in the band's history. And some people just want to, for example, I did a 4-part series on the Association. Now I knew when I started that last series that goes into the early 70s stuff is not going to be as popular, but it might be to somebody who's a big fan. So that way people that want that can go to that video, or people that just want the early hits days can go to the first 2 videos. So that seems to be working. And the best thing for me really is if I'm doing, like the Association is a perfect example. I think those add up to like 48 minutes. I mean, I can't expect somebody to sit through 48 minutes on the Association. It just seems like a lot to ask. So breaking them up like that I think is just an easier way to take them in. And it's an easier way for me to get them out to you. So when I get the first one out, edited and pushed out to you, I can work on the next 3, and just release those over the next week or whatever, however I do it. But it helps me get more information out more quickly. So the other thing I wanted to talk about with regard to how I put these together, because I do use music clips, and that's a little bit difficult when you're dealing with YouTube because there are some rules and copyright issues that a YouTuber has to get around, and sometimes you can't get around them. So what happens is I use very short clips. I wanted to start this channel and definitely use music clips because it's really hard to talk about obscure music from a well-known band without playing a part of that song. It's hard to talk about. It's hard to say, hey, this song is great, why don't you go listen to it? I'd rather just give you a little piece of it, decide if you like it, then you can decide where you want to go with that. I think that's an important part. I don't want to lose that. It's not getting easier for YouTubers to add music like that to their videos. Oftentimes you get a copyright strike, or they don't allow you to keep the money from the ads that play in it, for example. So I'm still navigating those waters, but it's going fairly well, and I think that the quality of the video is what's important. And some of these songs, I feel, if they don't get played in this way, I don't know who's going to hear them. It's one of those things I wanted to do with this channel, and that is to introduce a lot of obscure bands from well-known bands and get people to listen to their full catalog. So that seems to be working. A lot of people said, hey, I didn't know about this song or that song, and so that part of my channel seems to be working. So this is already October of 2021, and I've got one more Beetle Let It Be Get Back Sessions video to do that I want to get out before the release of Peter Jackson's film, which is near Thanksgiving, I guess. And I'll have other Beatles stuff coming. We'll get some reactions to that video, and this might be the only time, the last major release of a Beatles release ever. I mean, I can't think of what would be as big as this. We're going to get so much new information, meaning the 6 hours of video that Peter Jackson's putting together. I can't think of anything that would be this big of an event in Beatle history again with regard to releasing new material. So this is really special, and I know everybody's excited about it, so I will be talking a little bit about this as it gets closer. I'll make some predictions, I suppose, and then obviously we'll do some reactions after it's released. So that will all be coming. So meanwhile, keep your questions coming. I don't mind getting requests at all, and I really appreciate you guys watching and sticking with me and supporting the channel. So we'll see you in the next video here on Pop Goes the 60s.